Good night. So I'll now hold the lecture, I would say, of just or the video with regards to the holiday of the IDF. But first, I should say that I see that some people now are starting to understand to the full extent the consequences of the established fact, as I understand that the nanobots that I call Neros, they can act outside of my body. They can do things outside of my body. Of course, you can eat them as you've eaten, other what I suspect, but I don't have a proof for that. But I expect that you've eaten other nanobots that are similar to the Neros, but not exactly the same. Or, Neros of other type, that are, I should say lesser, without offending anyone, especially not the Titans, the Venusians. I think that's kind of like, my strong suspicion is that their body is, it contains the nanobots that are similar to the Neros, to mine, but not of exactly the same kind, and more specifically, mine can create theirs. So it's like mine are and I'm almost certain that their nanobots can also create things, but anything that they create, mine can also create, and most importantly, they can create the nanobots themselves, like their nanobots. Anyway, people start to understand that, yes, they can act out of my body. Even though it's like established fact for long ago, and I'm publishing videos on the matter for several months, but okay, perhaps people are slow, perhaps they will fall in victim to more disinformation propaganda machines of the Israel intelligence. Perhaps things takes time to proliferate. But they also understand another important issue, which is that, not everyone can actually do it. There's kind of like a lock mechanism here. And this is an issue that I've spoken about a lot. Actually, I speak about it for years now. But it wasn't under I would say the subject of the nanobots, because I didn't really think that they can. I wasn't sure that they even can do things outside my body. I have had preliminary experiments, and I've actually bought a microscope and other stuff, but this was all very preliminary. Most of what as I say, until the last couple of months, until I opened this YouTube channel, it was all. I'm doing the house arrest, and all was everything was recorded in this YouTube channel. So until I opened it, most of I thought of myself as interacting with alien creatures. That are entities that are that are some kind of like spaceships. That surrounds Earth. Not necessarily in what we call low Earth orbit. They could even be 100,000 kilometers, and still it's kind of like a low Earth orbit. It depends. What low is a relative term. Maybe for advanced civilization, 100,000 kilometers radius is considered a low orbit. Maybe even the moon itself is low orbit. Maybe they are on the. It's another something that I painted several. The moon is something that I paint quite a bit. It's like a recurring motive. So one of the motives is that spaceships that they're parked. They are parked in the huge lava tubes of the moon. The moon, by the way, contains. It's got like a huge lava tubes. Much bigger than those that are on Mars and those that are on the Earth, actually, because as the gravity is lower, the lava tubes are bigger, so they have huge lava tubes on the moon. So they could put whole cities in the lava tubes of the moon. And there's a lot of ground over there, because even though it's small, but it's there are no oceans, so it's all it's all ground. The moon is, it looks like dead from pointless, but it's actually a lot of real estate, like a ton of real estate, and there are a lot of. It can actually be used for many purposes. Famously, the dark side, what we call the dark side of the moon, or the far side of the moon, as we now say, is the only place in the entire solar system that is protected from direct hit by rockets or like bullets, I mean, of any kind that are launched or shot from the earth. It's interesting to think about. I mean, every other like place in the entire solar system, you can theoretically shoot like a rocket or some kind of a bullet. I mean, and it will hit it directly, but you cannot do it to the far side of the moon. This is it's interesting. I mean, to see, because even though it's so close to us, because of course it's, I mean, the moon is locked. I mean, it's tidally locked to the Earth. So you never, I mean, face, I mean, the far side of the moon. But I mean, not only from like, I mean, military purposes, but for other reasons. The moon is huge. I mean, because it's all ground. So anyway, what I wanted to say is that, I mean, I thought about the issue of like when is like if like I'm creating a sculpture or a painting that signifies like something. I call it a curse, like something like from voodoo, from the voodoo perspective. But when is it like active? When is and it's I mentioned that, I mean, recently, that it's a question. Even, I mean, when you communicate with the neros, even though it's much easier, like it's much easier. This kind of like question is much easier when dealing with the nanobots, because it's like they're always inside the container, and like, or several containers. But I mean, if it's connected, then it's I mean, you need to put the container in a certain structure that it's. So I mean, and so it's pretty certain, even though the question is still. It's still the question, even with the nanobots, but it's much easier to understand, like when is it like active, when the symbol is potent, and but with the spaceships it's much more complicated. So, and I've spoken about it quite a bit during the last year and a half, I would say, because it's a major issue, because I understood very well that this is something to do with me specifically. That, I mean, not anyone can activate it, and not anyone can control it. And I assumed that, and this is also true for the nanobots, and I've spoken about it the last couple of months, that it's not only me that can control those nanobots, but I mean, there's like, I mean, it's like I mean, it's like a competition between me and other like entities that, I mean, are for certain not Homo sapiens, but there can either be like cherubs, like, I mean, my type, or even perhaps titans that, I mean, of some type. And it's like a competition. I've spoken about this competition. It could be both, like, I mean, malevolent, and both, like, I mean, like sportive, I would say, like, I mean, that with less like malevolent tone to the conflict. And this relates also to the divinations that I've had, and many divinations with regards to the past, or, you know, maybe the far future, but all sorts of, like, I mean, like situations that I understood that are not relevant for now, for this specific moment. But I understood that, I mean, there is like that in the past, or maybe in the future, I was like part of, like, which I would say a family. I mean, in like, I mean, but not necessarily family where everyone likes each other, you know, like more like a family, like, I mean, from, you know, from Game of Thrones, where, I mean, I mean, it can be nice, and it can be less nice, you know. I mean, so, like, I mean, and I mean, the brothers and the sisters, they are like brothers and sisters, and they can compete with each other, but also, I mean, not necessarily like in a bad way, but it could also be in a bad way, over control of those nanobots. But more specifically, now, I mean, the issue of when things are, when is it active, like, is a question that relates, I mean, that I understand that it's now getting like relevant from, like from your perspective that you want to understand, okay, so what do we do with these things? And I discovered that, okay, it doesn't work. I'm sure that you've already got hold of the nanobots, and of all sorts of mixtures. Not it's not you don't need Mission Impossible team to steal pretty much anything that you want from me. And also I have a ton of stuff at my mother's apartment that I'm sure pretty it's not difficult to actually to investigate. And part of it, I will say that I'm glad if people have investigated the worms. So I've said it. I'm glad that they do it because it's. This. I want to give more credence to the threat that this worm poses to the Earth. So maybe people will, I don't know, start to move arms and legs, even though probably not. But anyway, so there must be some kind of a lock mechanism that to put it, maybe from your point of view, it simply says that you cannot use the nanobot, but I can use them. But it's more complicated than that, because what does it mean to use them? They are entities of their own. Maybe they use me. You can say that they use me. Who said I'm using them? So it's not a matter of who uses who, or who is the master and who is the servant, but more issue of of timing and activation. When is the. For example, okay, if I construct, for example, the voodoo stuff, the painting or the subject or the containers or the whole mixture, everything together, and I give it to you or whoever you are, and I give it to the Shabak, for example, can they now use it to and also I give them the Neo juice? Can they now activate it and do whatever? So it's just a question. Or on the other one, if someone else, presumably from the Shabak, constructed everything and again gave it to me, and I put it on my table and I do all the voodoo stuff that is needed, I put my Neos over there. Will they do it? It's a question. So you understand, the question is not really who commands the Neos, but the question of what is needed in order for the symbol to be potent or active. And as I said, it's not a new issue in my blogging and in podcasting. I've spoken about it for at least a year or a year and a half, and mostly with regards to the Starship. But it's the same question, even though it's actually even more complicated with regards to the Starship, because you don't you don't see the Starship from here, so you need it's more you need to. So it's more complicated. And also with the Starship, it's more complicated because, you can give them commands or orders that are very long term, presumably even in geological scales long term, but certainly in historical, from point of view of humans from the historical scale. So, for example, the cares of the asteroid, you tell them, okay, throw asteroids at the Earth. This is something, that can be, when will they throw the asteroids, and when will they come? And so it can have historical proportions. So the question of the activation is even more complicated. I would say that I knew from it's quite trivial to understand that not anyone can activate the Neos for two reasons. First of all, because of the fact that one of the most important things that you can say about the Neos, and this was proved. I've showed you several YouTube videos and many photographs that prove that they communicate with each other in a way that I have no idea how, and I think that it's. I said many times that I think that the question of how they communicate with each other is far beyond certainly my scientific knowledge, but also I think that far beyond the scientific knowledge of anyone on Earth. I just think that it breaks so many paradigms of physics and computer science and whatever. So it's I don't think that you can use current physics, a scientific physics science knowledge and computer and what you know in computer science currently in Earth to actually answer this question. They communicate with each other. So if they communicate with each other, they can also communicate with the largest container of Neos, which is my own body. So obviously why should they it makes sense that they will, I mean, that before they do everything, like, I mean, those that are outside of my body will in some way communicate with those that are inside of my body, even without my, this could be happen without me interacting, I mean, doing anything at all. They don't need my, like, permission to speak with each other, and they do it, like, all the time. So that's the first reason. The second reason is, like, more from, like, it's like, I mean, my assumption is that it's not the first time that a cherub like myself is visiting Earth. Like, it's like I always, like, everything that I do, I try to interpret it, like, from, like, historical perspective, that, I mean, of things that repeat. Not repeat because, I mean, God, like, there is, like, there is, like, I mean, the Nietzschean concept of eternal repetition, that, I mean, everything must repeat, or, like, I mean, it's something that's associated with pagan cultures, like the issue of repetition. And what if, like, I mean, the concept, I mean, that is strongly correlated or related to monotheism is that, I mean, you stop this repetition and you start like history as a vector that, I mean, that is, I mean, you can, I mean, this theory is actually, I mean, it's famously presented in the book Mimesis by Erich Auerbach. It's a very, he's doing it very nicely, and I think that he's correct in many ways. That and certainly, I mean, from God's perspective, history does not have to repeat. The repetition is something that is related to sin, like, to the fact that people, like, I mean, they keep doing the same bad things because they don't, like, change for the better. But if they would, there is no, like, need for repetition. So repetition just happens because of failure to be better than that. Anyway, I always think of myself, like, as not like a new occurrence here on Earth. And so I tell myself, okay, so, I mean, if in the past, people, I mean, creatures like me not only visited Earth, but actually were part of the society in Earth, which I'm certain that it is true. I mean, and I'm certain that, I mean, they could have used the Neos in the past as well. Never mind, like, what was the technological, like, level. I don't know. Perhaps it was, like, primitive. Perhaps it wasn't. It's, a whole other question of, like, it's a very, like, something that I actually found, like, interesting, like, since I was a little boy, like, and I've read the Chariots of the Gods of Daniken. It's popular trash, but it's opening your eyes to many, especially when you're very young. So there's the whole issue of, like, ancient technology. I mean, so I don't want to get into it, but whether, I mean, there were civilizations with that was amazing technologies in the past of the Earth, and whether or not, either way, I mean, they could have used the Neos for certain, because you don't really need that much technology in order to use the Neos. Perhaps not the best, the most efficient way. Perhaps with that electricity, things would take more time. But okay, I mean, people in the past, like, were more patient, like, so they had, like, I mean, so yes. I should remind you that you don't have to put, like, electrolysis rods in order to see, like, nice things, like, happening with Neos, and I've proved it many times. It takes much longer, like, I mean, way longer. But it eventually, like, after a week or 2 weeks, I mean, you will see nice things, if you only have the patience, and if you, I mean, so what I thought, I mean, my hypothesis is that if it was like possible for anyone to control the Neos just by, I mean, taking control of some of them, then first, I mean, many people would have tried to do so in the past, like, just Homo sapiens would try. And second, my hypothesis is they're most, like, I mean, their high priority, like, the first thing in their agenda, even before gold. Perhaps the second would have been, let's create gold, but the first one was, I mean, if they had, like, any bit of intelligence, and my assumption is that they had, no matter, like, to what culture they belonged, they probably wasn't all stupid. So if they had any kind of intelligence, I mean, the first priority would be to create more Neros. I mean, that's my first priority right now. And, like, I mean, it's because, I mean, obviously, like, I mean, it's like, I mean, when you get, like, the genie, like, it's like the question of, like, I mean, if you have a genie in a battle and tells you that you have 3 wishes. So, I mean, the first wish, I mean, if you have any intelligence, would be, give me 20 wishes. I mean, so it's about the same here. I mean, so, and my assumption is that, I mean, if that in such a, I mean, that following those like circumstances, I mean, the earth would have been just consumed by neros. I mean, that's the logical conclusion, that if anyone can use them, and if it was possible in the past to use them, and if, I mean, part of like using them will be to give them command to multiply, and if they can multiply outside my body, and I'm sure they can, and if anyone can do it, I mean, and anyone has like the incentive to do it, I mean, the only like, I mean, natural consequences of all these arguments is that the earth will be filled by them, because people will be just irresponsibly, like everyone will try to create more and more, and they will just fill the earth, and there will be no earth, just, I mean, a bunch of neros. Like, I mean, it's what we call in futurism, this is called the Grey Goose scenario. It's a famous like end of life scenario, like apocalyptic scenario that is hypothesized by many, like as one of the ways to end the civilization. It should be mentioned here that, I mean, that life also started with Grey Goo. So, I mean, it's both apocalyptic scenario and also, I mean, a Genesis scenario. Like, I mean, it's scenario that, I mean, it's both like the end of life and also the beginning of life, because actually life began that way, like on Earth. Like, I mean, life starts like that. Like, I mean, you have, I mean, the first cell, I mean, is created, and it's kind of like, I mean, this is biogenesis. It's kind of like a miracle, and so how it's created. This is, some people think it's related to the tides, and surely it's something to do with electricity. I mean, so, I mean, it's but I mean, it's probably like it's kind of like a miracle that, I mean, the first cell is created, but and then it's starting to multiply, and soon after, soon, like, I mean, in geological scale, like, I mean, can be millions of years, but still it's not a lot of time, like in astronomical schedule. So after like a couple of million years, I mean, the whole Earth is covered with these like unicellular creatures. So it's pretty much Grey Goo, and they multiply so much, and they have so many like billions of generations, and countless number of entities, and so eventually, in a process that, I mean, some say that it's even more miraculous than the process of the creation of the first one. Some would say that the next miracle is even more amazing. A multicellular creature is mutated and born, and again, this might be even more like amazing than even the creation of the first life form. But because there are so many of those, like, I mean, presumably, I mean, the entire planet is covered with this unicellular creature, and they have so many generations, like, and they have millions of years to multiply. I mean, so, I mean, the probability of the miracle of the multicellular like creation is, I mean, even if it's like infinitesimal, like it's so small that it's almost nothing. I mean, because the whole planet is filled with them, and they live and multiply. I mean, so according to the theory, I mean, eventually, I mean, even if it's one, it requires like a chance of 1 in a billion. Eventually, I mean that lottery ticket, I mean, is filled, and multicellular creature is created, which is, again, I would say, perhaps it's even more amazing than the creation of the unicellular life form, like from dead material. And from then on, it's like it's easy. I mean, it's, you know, the whole like evolution thing, and like you know, disgusting creatures, I mean, eat each other and multiply, and I mean, and then like, I mean, like there are humans, and then there are like humans that have only mouth and tongue, and like this disgusting thing, and then, I mean, they are back to the Grey Goo, which presumably is not, I mean, is even better than them. That's the story of life, in short, the TLDR of life. So it starts with Grey Goo, and some hypothesize that it's end with Grey Goo as well, and maybe and since, I mean, the Earth is not covered with Grey Goo now, I would my hypothesis is that not everyone can control like those creatures. Okay, so I'll do another video on the IDF. Just a minute.